They say time heals everything. But they never tell you how long it takes or what to do in the meantime when all you can feel is the aching silence left behind. I still remember the scent of the antiseptic. It clung to my sweater for days after we left the hospital like some ghost that refused to go. Liam was 7. Just 7. His shoes were still muddy from the backyard. His lunchbox still had a dinosaur sticker peeling off. One day he was laughing in his room drawing superheroes with jelly-stained fingers, and the next he was just gone. Like a light bulb that flickered then quit. The cancer had been relentless. Stage 4 by the time we found it. We fought, we really did. Hospital visits, experimental treatments, prayers whispered in waiting rooms. But in the end all I could do was hold his hand as he slipped away, his little fingers going cold in mine while the machines did their quiet beeping. Afterward everything felt too quiet. The refrigerator sounded like thunder. The silence in the living room screamed at me. And David, my husband, he turned into a shadow. I couldn't reach him. He'd always been the strong one, always had some joke, some plan, some fix-it solution. But after Liam he just shut down. Started working longer hours, then not coming home at all. When he did he'd sleep on the couch, eyes red, breath thick with whiskey and grief. First I tried. I cooked. I asked him to talk. I left notes on his pillow, little ones with memories of Liam or just reminders that I was still here. But he didn't respond. One night I found the bathroom mirror cracked. He'd punched it. Said nothing. Just stared at the floor while I swept up the glass. I think we both blamed each other in the way that grieving parents do, without words, without fairness. We blamed ourselves too. I'd been the one to ignore his leg pain, chalking it up to growing pains. David was the one who didn't push the pediatrician harder. You replay every second and wonder what if, as if any answer would unbury your child. We didn't argue. That would have meant we cared enough to fight. No, we just stopped existing together. Like two ghosts trapped in the same house. It wasn't even a big fight that ended us. Just a conversation over cold eggs. I think I need to go, he said. I can't breathe in this house anymore. And all I said was, okay. He packed a duffel bag, kissed me on the forehead and left the next morning. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat at the kitchen table and finished his eggs. That was the start of the end. But not the end of the story. You see, I never imagined we'd find our way back. I didn't even want to. For the longest time I thought we were better apart, at least then the grief didn't rub up against itself and catch fire. But love is a strange, stubborn thing. It doesn't die the way you think it should. It lingers. And sometimes it reaches for you just when you think you're ready to forget. But that part comes later. Right now I was just a woman alone in a house full of ghosts, listening to the wind whistle through the nursery. We never had the heart to pack up. And that's how it begins. It's strange how you can miss someone who's still alive. Stranger still when you miss 3 people: the man you married, the boy you raised, and the woman you used to be. The mornings were the hardest. The house would yawn awake around 6 even when I didn't. Birds tapping the windows like they were trying to bring Liam back. The sun slid through the blinds like it hadn't been there the day before, like it didn't know any better. And me, I just lay there wrapped in David's old hoodie, pretending I still belonged in a life that made sense. The first real day alone I wandered through the house like a ghost. Liam's crayon drawing still on the fridge, his shoes by the front door, one sock balled inside the other. I thought about cleaning it all up, boxing it away. But touching any of it felt like betrayal. Like if I moved one Batman action figure I might forget the way he said, "Mom, watch this," right before leaping off the couch. So I didn't touch a thing. Grief makes you weird. I started talking to myself, well, not to myself, to Liam. Out loud. In the car, in the kitchen, in the cereal aisle. I'd whisper, should we get the marshmallow kind or the flakes? And wait like he might answer. The checkout lady once smiled like I had a Bluetooth in. I didn't. The nights were just as bad. Worse maybe. Because at least in the daytime you can pretend you're just busy, just distracted. But at night when the streetlights hum and you hear the neighbors laughing 2 houses down, you remember everything you've lost. I didn't sleep much. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, tracing cracks I hadn't noticed before. Sometimes I'd open David's drawer. He left his old flannel shirt in there. I'd pull it out, breathe it in like a lunatic, and fall asleep clutching it like a lifeline. About 3 weeks after he left I got a call. His name flashed on my screen and I swear my hands forgot how to function. "Hey," I answered, voice half air. He didn't say much. Just that he left some books in the attic. Said he might stop by to get them. I told him where the spare key was. Neither of us mentioned Liam. We didn't have to. The pause between our words said it all. A few days later I heard the creak of the attic steps. I stayed downstairs. I couldn't see him. Not yet. But I listened to him up there moving boxes, pausing now and then. I imagined him picking up the photo album. The one with Liam at 3 holding a sparkler on the 4th of July. The one where we're all in matching red, white and blue shirts because I insisted on being that mom. I almost went up. Almost. Instead I made tea. Then poured it down the drain because it went cold. Like everything else. Eventually I opened the front door. And there he was standing in the dusk with his car running behind him. "You look tired," he said. I shrugged. "I am." We just stood there awkward and heavy. I could see the weight in his shoulders. He still wore his grief like a second skin. "I went through the album," he said. "Didn't think it'd hit me like that." "Of course it did," I whispered. "It was our life." Then he said the strangest thing. "Do you want to get coffee sometime?" I blinked. "What, like a date?" "Not a date," he said too quickly, "just coffee." But the way he looked at me like he was trying to remember the shape of my face, I knew it was a date. Or the broken beginnings of something like one. I said yes. And after he left I stood in the doorway, the chill brushing against my toes, wondering what in the world I had just agreed to. Because how do you date the man whose heart you watched break beside your own? How do you start over with someone you already lived a whole lifetime with? They don't warn you that grief doesn't end in funerals or final goodbyes. Sometimes it circles back wearing a flannel shirt and asking if you want cream in your coffee. I stood in front of the mirror for 45 minutes. Not because I wanted to look good. Honestly, I wasn't even sure what looking good meant anymore. My eyes were tired, my skin pale in that soft gray way people get when they haven't eaten right in months. But still I put on mascara. Just a little. Just enough to remind myself that I was still a woman, not just a mother without a child or a wife without a marriage. When I walked into the cafe, he was already there. Same corner table we used to sit at on Sunday mornings before soccer practice. He stood up when he saw me, like the old days, like chivalry wasn't something we'd left behind somewhere around month 4 of Liam's chemo. "Hey," he said, and it sounded gentle like a question. "Hey," I answered and sat down before my knees gave out. He looked older. Or maybe just deflated. His shoulders rounded in a way they hadn't before. Like all his strength had melted out through his spine. But his eyes, they still had that warm brown I used to love. Only now they were dimmer. Worn out. Kind of like mine. We ordered. I got chamomile, he got black coffee like always. And then we just sat there staring into our cups like they might give us instructions. Took a while before we started talking. We kept to safe topics, how his job was, whether I'd seen that new grocery store, the way the old oak tree on Maple Street had finally fallen after the last storm. But eventually the pause came. That long one. You know the kind. The one that stretches out and threatens to tip the table over with its weight. And then he said it. I dreamt of him last week. I didn't breathe. He was riding his bike. The blue one. Down the sidewalk, laughing so hard he nearly fell over. My hand tightened around the teacup. He loved that bike. David nodded. And then he turned to me and said, "You don't have to be sad forever, Dad." Just like that. And then he was gone. That was when I started crying. Silent tears. The kind that sneak out while your face stays calm, like you're not breaking. But you are. I still can't go in his room, I admitted, voice cracking. I just stand outside the door like it's a crime scene. David looked away, swallowing hard. I packed up some of his books. That day I came for the boxes. I hope that's okay. I nodded. Yeah, that's okay. We sat there for a while longer. Talking. Not talking. Just being. Two people with a shared wound, trying not to bleed on the floor. Before we left he asked if he could walk me home. I said sure. It was only 6 blocks, but every step felt like an echo of some past life. When we got to my porch he paused. Looked up at the house like it was a museum of our old happiness. "You ever think about trying again?" he asked. I stared at him. "Trying what?" "Us." The silence that followed was long and sharp. "David," I whispered, "we didn't just fall apart. We exploded. We were rubble." "I know," he said. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't love you. I miss you. Even the broken version." Tears welled up again, but this time they were angry ones. "You left. You left when I needed you the most. When our son was dead and I couldn't even stand upright. You vanished." "I know," he said again. "And I will regret that for the rest of my life. I didn't let him kiss me. I didn't even let him touch my hand. I just nodded and stepped inside, shutting the door between us. But my back stayed pressed to the wood for a long time. Because he was right about one thing. I missed him too. Even the broken version. We didn't fall back in love all at once. It wasn't some grand reunion, no violins, no slow-motion kisses in the rain. It was two broken people trying not to scratch old wounds while reaching for something they barely remembered how to hold. After that night on the porch, we didn't talk for a week. I thought he might call. He didn't. I thought I might reach out. I didn't. We sat with our ghosts, each in our own corners of the universe, letting silence hang between us like a worn-out prayer. Then came the 4th of July, Liam's favorite holiday, the one where he'd wear his flag cape and run barefoot through the lawn, sparklers clutched in both hands, shouting, "I'm Captain Firework." I wasn't planning to do anything that year. Just close the blinds, maybe drown it all out with old movies and boxed wine. But around 6 I heard a knock. David stood there holding a box of fireworks. "I thought maybe we could light them for him," he said, not looking at me. "We don't have to talk. Just light them." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe because grief makes you do strange things. Maybe because I missed the sound of a match being struck in his hands. Maybe because I was tired of being alone in my pain. We went to the park near the house, the one where Liam used to feed ducks and fall off the jungle gym. It was mostly empty. Families further off, their laughter just a low hum in the distance. David laid out the fireworks like he was arranging a meal. I brought sparklers. We lit the first one in silence, and it zipped into the sky, shattering into gold and red and silver. For a second I forgot how to breathe. The colors lit up David's face and I could see he was crying. I was too, but neither of us said a word. Just spark and sky over and over. Then came the final one. A big box labeled Midnight Bloom. David handed me the match. "You should light it." So I did. It exploded into this magnificent bouquet of blue and white, the same shades as Liam's bike. I laughed through the tears and David did too. And then we hugged. No kiss. No promise. Just two people wrapped around each other in a moment that felt somehow like mercy. But of course it wasn't that easy. The next morning I found a note on my porch. Handwritten. Sloppy. "Last night was beautiful. But I'm scared. Scared I'll break you again. Scared I'll break me. Still I want to try. One coffee, one firework at a time." Rudi. I held it in my hands for so long, it warmed up like skin. So we started dating. Not in the sweet, high school way with movie tickets and drive-thrus. No, our version was different. Messier. Sadder. Realer. We'd meet for walks, talk about nothing and everything. Sometimes we'd laugh. Sometimes we'd cry. Sometimes we'd sit in his car and say absolutely nothing while the radio played some old song that Liam used to hum. The first time he reached for my hand again, I almost pulled away. Because loving him now meant risking the same kind of heartbreak that already wrecked us once. And grief has a long memory. It keeps receipts. But his fingers were warm. Familiar. So I let them stay. There were setbacks. Plenty. One night he showed up drunk. He stood on my porch slurring apologies, said he'd been having dreams again. Couldn't stop picturing Liam calling out for him. "I should have done more," he cried. "I should have saved him." I made him coffee, tucked him into the couch, and sat beside him till he fell asleep. The next morning he was mortified. Tried to leave before I woke up. But I stopped him. Told him we don't get to heal in straight lines. That night I realized something. We weren't falling back into love. We were rebuilding it. Brick by brick. Scar by scar. Not some shiny new version, but the weathered kind, tougher, worn down in spots, maybe even crooked. but still standing. Still ours. There's a certain kind of silence that clings to a child's bedroom after they're gone. It's not just stillness, it's sacred. Like the air is holding its breath, waiting for the sound of small feet that will never return. We avoided Liam's room like it was cursed. From the day he passed, I closed the door, and it stayed that way for almost a year. I tiptoe past it like a superstitious woman, afraid of stirring the dust or the ghosts. Sometimes I'd put my ear to the wood and imagine I could hear him in there talking to his stuffed animals, humming some made-up tune. David never even looked in its direction. Until one Sunday morning in October. We were sitting at my kitchen table. Yes, my kitchen, because despite everything we still hadn't moved in together again. Baby steps, I'd told him. So we dated, spent weekends in each other's space, danced around the question of us, like we were both afraid the answer might kill the progress we'd made. Anyway, we were just finishing pancakes. He made them, burnt the first batch like he always did. And then he looked up and said, "I want to go into his room." Just like that. No warning. Like he'd been carrying it around in his back pocket, this impossible thought. I dropped my fork. Why? He looked away. Because I need to remember, not just mourn. I didn't answer. Just sat there, throat thick, palms sweating. Then I nodded. We walked upstairs together. Each step creaked louder than I remembered. When we reached the door, my hand trembled on the knob. "You don't have to," David whispered. But I did. I turned the handle. It was exactly as we'd left it. The Avengers comforter. The posters of planets and dinosaurs. The little lamp shaped like a rocket ship that still worked when I flicked the switch. The dust motes swirled in the light like little ghosts saying you're late. David didn't say anything at first. He just walked to the bookshelf and ran his fingers over Liam's favorites. "He was reading at a third grade level, remember?" he said quietly. "I thought he was a genius." "He was," I said. "He was ours." He sat on the edge of the bed and picked up a small, worn-out plush of fox with one eye missing and a threadbare tail. "Liam's favorite." "Reggie," I said, smiling for the first time that day. David clutched it. Just held it there, fists clenched, eyes glassy. I used to tell him stories with this thing. Made up whole worlds where Reggie was a secret agent with laser whiskers. He'd laugh so hard he'd snort. I sat beside him, our knees touching. The weight in the room was unbearable. And yet, I didn't want to leave. It felt like Liam's presence was somehow more real here than in any photo. "I thought going in here would destroy me," I admitted. "But it kind of feels like he's letting us in. Like he's been waiting." David didn't speak. He just leaned his head against mine. And for a moment we were a family again. Even if it was only in that room. Even if it was only in our memories. That night we didn't sleep. We lay on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket, Reggie between us, passing stories back and forth like war medals. And slowly the pain began to shift. Still sharp, still real, but now threaded with gratitude. Gratitude that we'd loved so deeply. That we'd raised someone beautiful. That we hadn't let our grief burn down everything we had left. You don't fall in love again the way you did the first time.
No butterflies. No stolen glances.
The second time, after grief has torn through you like a hurricane, love looks different. It looks like choosing. Every day. Even when your hands are shaking. We didn't label it. There were no declarations, no Facebook status changes, no "are we back together?" moments. We just kept showing up. He'd fix the screen door I never got around to. I'd cook too much dinner and pretend I wasn't hoping he'd stay. We were careful. Like two people carrying something fragile across a minefield. Because loving again didn't mean forgetting. And it didn't mean we were healed. It just meant we were tired of being alone in the ache. One night, we went to a friend's wedding. I wore a navy blue dress I hadn't worn since before the diagnosis. David wore the suit he'd worn to the funeral. We didn't talk about that part. The reception was held in a barn strung up with fairy lights and too much optimism. When the slow song started, he looked at me like he used to, like I was the last good thing left in a world that had gone dark. "Dance with me?" he asked. I hesitated. "We don't dance." "We used to," he said. "Kitchen floor. Socks and all." I laughed despite myself. and let him pull me onto the floor. We danced like people who knew loss. Our steps weren't perfect, but our rhythm came from someplace deeper, like our bodies remembered the shape of us, even if our hearts were still catching up. Halfway through the song I whispered, "This feels scary." David didn't miss a beat. That's how I know it's real. I rested my head on his chest and let myself be held. But it wasn't all soft music and quiet revelations. There were fights too. Big ones. Ones where we said things we couldn't take back. Like the night I found him staring at Liam's baby monitor, still plugged in, still glowing like a wound that wouldn't close. "You said you were ready to move forward," I snapped. He didn't look at me. I said I was trying. We didn't talk for 2 days after that. And then he showed up with a box. Inside it, the monitor, the hospital wristband, a few Polaroids we hadn't seen in months. "I want to pack it together," he said. "Not to forget. Just to start making space." So we did. Crying and laughing and pausing every 5 minutes because our hands would start shaking again. But we did it. We packed Liam's life into a memory box wrapped in a blue ribbon, and we placed it in the closet together. Later, I caught David standing there with his hand on the doorknob, just breathing. "I thought I was going to lose you too," he said, almost inaudibly. "You did," I replied softly. "But maybe we found each other again." That night he didn't leave. That night he stayed. And in the morning when I rolled over and saw his face, peaceful for the first time in years, I realized something that knocked the air out of me. We weren't fixing what we had. We were building something new. Right here. In the ruins. Sometimes love knocks gently. And sometimes it barrels in, dragging hope behind it like a suitcase, asking if you're ready to believe in it again. It happened on a Wednesday. The kind of day where nothing much was supposed to happen. The sky was that moody gray I always like, soft, a little dramatic, like it might rain but probably wouldn't. David and I were in the backyard, raking leaves because it was the kind of mindless task that let us exist side by side without having to say too much. I was bent over, scooping up a stubborn pile under the oak tree, when I turned and found him staring at me. "What?" I said, smiling a little. "Do I have a leaf in my hair?" He didn't laugh. Instead, he took a step closer, holding something in his hand. A ring. Not the ring, the one I'd thrown into the drawer after everything crumbled. This one was new. Simple. Thin gold band.
No diamonds.
Just real. "I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks, he said. I straightened slowly, heart pounding. "Why?" He exhaled like it hurt. "Because I didn't know if I was allowed to ask. But now I think I have to. Not because it fixes anything. Not because it erases what we lost. But because I want to spend whatever life I have left learning how to love you better than I did before." The rake slipped from my fingers. He got down on one knee. "I know this is messy," he said, "and maybe too soon. But will you marry me again?" I didn't answer right away. I stood there, hands shaking, staring at the man who had once broken my heart, and then carefully, painfully, spent the last year stitching it back together. I thought about Liam, about our first vows, about the way the grief had drowned us both and still hadn't managed to kill what was real underneath. "Yes," I whispered, then louder because I needed to hear it myself. "Yes." He slipped the ring on my finger, and I swore I felt something click into place. Not a perfect ending, but a beginning I didn't think I'd ever be brave enough to want again. We didn't throw a party. We didn't post online. We just went inside, ordered pizza, and fell asleep on the couch, tangled up in each other, like the last decade hadn't happened. Or like it had and we were still here despite it. But it wasn't all magic from that point on. We still fought sometimes. Still tripped over triggers we didn't know we had. I once caught him tearing up while folding Liam's old t-shirts we decided to donate, and I lost it, told him I wasn't ready, screamed at him in a way that scared even me. He didn't fight back. Just sat on the floor, arms around the shirts, and cried. Later that night I joined him. We laid on the rug in silence, grieving all over again. But now we did it together. And that made all the difference. Love wasn't fireworks anymore. It was staying on the floor. It was choosing each other, even in the quiet, even in the mess. Especially in the mess. This is not the kind of story that ends with a perfect bow. It's the kind that leaves a little fray at the edges, a thread that catches on your sleeve sometimes, reminding you of where you've been. But oh, how it holds. Our second wedding wasn't a wedding at all. It was a picnic. Just me, David, a patchwork quilt, and a framed photo of Liam set between us like a guest of honor. We went to the lake he used to love, the one with the ducks and the ice cream truck that always parked under the elm. David wore a tie over his t-shirt because he said, "It still counts." I wore the dress I almost didn't buy because I thought I'd never need another nice dress again. He read vows he wrote on a napkin from the cafe where we'd started talking again. They were messy and beautiful. He promised to choose me when it was easy and especially when it wasn't, to hold space for our grief and still make room for joy, to laugh at the dumb movies I love and never let the silence stretch too long again. I didn't write mine. I just spoke. "I don't know how to promise forever," I told him, "but I can promise today, and tomorrow, and the day after that, as long as we're honest, as long as we're kind." He cried. So did I. We kissed and the ducks applauded. Well, quacked. Same thing. And then life began again. It wasn't glamorous. We still argued over groceries and took turns forgetting the laundry. There were nights we sat in Liam's room just to remember. Mornings I woke up sobbing because a dream had tricked me into believing I heard his laugh again. But we built something. Slowly. Something new. We started volunteering at the children's wing of the hospital where Liam had been treated. Not because we were saints. Because we needed to. Because holding those tiny hands and painting dragons on their 4 stands helped us breathe again. We adopted a dog. A mutt with crooked ears and a bark that sounded like he was sneezing. Liam would have loved him. We named him Rocket. And sometimes on quiet evenings, David would sit on the porch with his guitar and play the lullaby he used to hum to Liam. I'd hum along. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd just listen. And we'd hold hands. We never stopped missing him. We never stopped being changed by him. But we stopped letting the pain be the only thing we saw. Our love became something fierce. Weathered. Deep. Like 2 trees who'd survived the same storm. Roots tangled underground. And when people ask how we survived the worst thing imaginable, I don't really have an answer. Except this. We didn't. Not all at once. We broke. We lost each other. We grieved. But then we found each other again. And still we loved. Always we loved.